What is up, my fellow Shield Brothers? It is Shield Brother 6 for the History Armada, and we are back again on May 18th, this fine Monday. And today we are talking about one of the most significant figures in history that had a huge impact on history and how it developed throughout Europe and the world. On May 18th, 1805 was the coronation of Napoleon Bonaparte. On May 18th, Napoleon Bonaparte became Emperor of the French people. Today's video is going to be talking about the coronation itself, and about the early life and the significant events and factors of Napoleon Bonaparte's life. This is kind of an intro video to Napoleon, as well as a mentioning of his coronation and why it's significant. So, Napoleon Bonaparte became Emperor of the French by snatching the crown from the hands of Pope Pius VII during the actual coronation ceremony, and then crowning himself. By putting the imperial crown on his own head while the Pope stood by, Napoleon made a symbolic gesture stating that he would be subservient to no one on earth, and that Rome would never command him or France. This is very significant because it is a divergence. France had always had of late in this time period, France had had a very turbulent relations with Rome and the Popery. And it is akin to England and the divergence of the church, etc. And Napoleon wanted to make a show by having the Pope there and having the Pope crown him. Kind of saying, oh look, the Catholic Church has come back to France. But at the same time, he crowned himself by taking the imperial crown from the Pope and placing it on his own head. So yes, he was like, oh look, the Catholic Church has returned to France, but on the same time, he was saying, but I will listen to no man. So let's talk about his early life a little bit. On the bottom left, you can see a monument to Napoleon that is in Corsica, where he was born. So Napoleon Bonaparte lived 15th of August, 1769 to the 5th of May, 1821. So not only is it his coronation month, it is also his death month. But he was a military and political leader during the later stages of the French Revolution. As Napoleon I, he was Emperor of the French from 1804 to 1815. His legal reform system, the Napoleonic Code, has been a major influence on many civil law jurisdictions worldwide. But he is best remembered for the wars he led against a series of coalitions, the so-called Napoleonic Wars, which, fun fact, the Napoleonic Wars are one of my favorite series of wars to talk about and learn about. During these Napoleonic Wars, he established hegemony over much of Europe and sought to spread revolutionary ideals throughout Europe and its neighboring states. Napoleon was born in Corsica to parents of noble Italian ancestry and trained as an artillery officer in mainland France. In 1799, he staged a coup d'etat and installed himself as first consul of France. 5 years later, after becoming first consul, the French Senate proclaimed him emperor on May 18, 1804. In the first decade of the 19th century, the French Empire under Napoleon engaged in a series of conflicts, the Napoleonic Wars, involving every major European power in these wars. After a streak of victories, France secured a dominant position in continental Europe, and Napoleon maintained the French sphere of influence throughout the formation of extensive alliances and the appointment of friends and family members to rule over European countries as French client states and neighbor and sister states. Napoleon's campaigns are studied at military academies throughout much of the world even to this day. Napoleon Bonaparte rapidly rose through the ranks of the military, seizing the new opportunities presented by the revolution and becoming a general at the age of 24. The French Directory eventually gave him command of the Army of Italy after he suppressed the 13th Vendemiaire revolt against the government from royalist insurgents. At age 26, he began his first military campaign against the Austrians and the Italian monarchs aligned with the Habsburgs, winning virtually every battle he was engaged in, conquering the Italian peninsula in a year while establishing sister republics with local support and becoming a war hero in France. In 1798, he led a military expedition to Egypt that served as a springboard to political power. He orchestrated a coup in November 1799 and became first consul of the Republic through this. After the Peace of Amiens in 1802, Napoleon turned his attention to France's colonies. He sold the Louisiana Territory to the United States for an imaginable amount, and he attempted to restore slavery to the French Caribbean colonies. However, while he was successful in restoring slavery in the Eastern Caribbean, Napoleon failed in his attempts to subdue Saint-Domingue and the colony that France once proudly boasted as the Pearl of the Antilles, becoming independent as Haiti in 1804. Napoleon's ambition and public approval inspired him to go on further, and he became the first emperor on this day, May 18th, 1804, Emperor of the French. A careful distinction between the kings and the emperor that Napoleon made himself. The kings often declared themselves King of France, and declaring France proper as a personal object of the king, whereas Napoleon was Emperor of the French people. He never claimed France as his personal territory like the French kings had. So that's what differentiated himself in the minds of his subjects between the kings of old and this new empire of the French. So the French invasion of Russia in 1812 marked a turning point in Napoleon's fortunes and military history. His Grande Armée was badly damaged in the campaign and never fully recovered. In 1813, the Sixth Coalition defeated his forces at Leipzig. The following year, after this, the coalition invaded France, forced Napoleon to abdicate, and exiled him to the island of Elba. Less than a year later, he escaped Elba and returned to power, but was defeated at the Battle of Waterloo in June 1815. Everyone that knows anything about Napoleon always knows him for the Battle of Waterloo. Napoleon spent the last 6 years of his life in confinement by the British on the island of St. Helena. An autopsy later concluded that he had died of stomach cancer. Napoleon's influence on the modern world brought liberal reforms to the numerous territories that he conquered and controlled, such as the Low Countries, Switzerland, large parts of modern Italy, Germany, Spain. He even created the Grand Duchy of Warsaw and gave them liberal reforms. He implemented fundamental liberal policies in France and throughout Western Europe. His Napoleonic Code has influenced the legal systems of more than 70 nations around the world. British historian Andrew Robert says, "The ideas that underpin our modern world, meritocracy, equality before the law, property rights, religious tolerance, modern secular education, sound finances, and so on, were championed, consolidated, codified, and geographically extended by Napoleon Bonaparte. To them, he added a rational and efficient local administration, an end to rural banditry, the encouragement of science and arts, the abolishment of feudalism, and the greatest codification of laws since the fall of the Roman Empire." Not only was Napoleon Bonaparte a champion of legal reform, of liberal statification and codification, he was also a fantastic general. I would argue that in modern history, alongside with Frederick the Great, Napoleon Bonaparte was the greatest general of modern history up to, I would say, the 20th century. Maybe even during the 20th century. He shaped and changed warfare so greatly that his works and his tactics are still studied at military colleges today. But that is videos for a Leggiere time, my fellow Shield Brothers of the History Armada. I am ShieldBros6. I hope you have enjoyed. I hope you have learned something about Napoleon Bonaparte and his coronation and his effects on the European world on this May 18th. And I hope you have enjoyed, and as always, this has been ShieldBros6, and I'll catch y'all next time.